The discovery. The planet was quiet. Too quiet for an alien world that had once been a hub of exploration and mystery. The ground, covered in layers of dust and rock, held secrets from a time long forgotten. Far beneath the surface, an ancient relic waited, hidden from the prying eyes of any explorers daring enough to disturb it. A team of alien explorers had been sent to investigate the strange readings that had come from this uncharted world. They were not looking for a warship. They weren't expecting anything more than ruins, perhaps the remnants of some ancient civilization that had long since vanished. The planet was far from the known territories of the galaxy, nestled in a dark corner of space. It was the kind of place few cared to visit, and those who did were rarely heard from again. But today the team was about to uncover something that would shake the galaxy to its core. The crew consisted of 5 members, all highly trained in the art of discovery. Their leader, Zurich, was a seasoned explorer with years of experience in locating forgotten technologies. His second-in-command, Vira, was an expert in alien cultures. Alongside them were the scientists, Orin and Kale, and a young technician named Lyra, who had a sharp mind for technology. As they made their way through the barren landscape, Zurich's mind wandered. They had been on many expeditions like this one, and nothing had ever turned out to be what they expected. The history of the galaxy was littered with myths of powerful civilizations, their weapons lost to time. But this time, something felt different. The readings they had detected were unlike anything they had ever encountered. "We're close," Zurich said, looking up at the desolate horizon. He could see the dark outline of what looked like a structure in the distance. It wasn't natural. It seemed too precise, too organized, for nature to have formed it. Vira stepped beside him, her eyes scanning the area. "It's a ship," she muttered under her breath. "But it's old. Really old. It looks like it's been buried for centuries." The rest of the team gathered around, taking in the sight of the ship, half buried in the earth, its metallic surface dull and corroded by time. Yet there was an undeniable aura of power about it. The ship's size was enormous, dwarfing anything the team had seen before. Its design was unlike anything the galaxy's current civilizations had built. It was sleek, almost alien in its form, yet it held a human touch. The team exchanged confused glances, unsure of what to make of the discovery. "This is human?" Orin asked, his voice filled with disbelief. He was the scientist of the team, usually skeptical about any claims that went against what they had learned through their studies. But this was different. How could it be human? "No human ship has ever come this far out of known space." "I don't know," Zurich replied, staring at the ship. "But it looks like it's been here for a long time, possibly even longer than any of us have known. We need to investigate." Lyra, ever the curious technician, was the first to approach the ship. "I can get us inside. There must be some sort of power source still active in there. Even after all these years, we might be able to tap into it." Zurich nodded. "Do it. We need to know what we're dealing with." As Lyra worked on accessing the ship's control panel, the rest of the team stood watch. Their hearts raced with anticipation. There was something undeniably strange about the ship. It wasn't just a relic. It wasn't just an ancient artifact left behind by some forgotten race. It was something far more significant. Lyra's fingers moved quickly over the panel, bypassing locks and security protocols that hadn't been touched in centuries. The ship's systems came alive with a soft hum, and the doors slowly opened with a metallic groan. The air that escaped from within smelled stale, but there was an unmistakable energy in the atmosphere. "It's working," Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. She stepped aside to let the others in. "It's all still functional." The team entered the ship cautiously, their eyes scanning the surroundings. Inside, they found themselves in a massive control room, its walls lined with technology, unlike anything they had ever seen. Displays flickered to life, revealing ancient schematics and data that seemed to be encoded in a language they couldn't understand. Yet there was one thing they did recognize: human symbols. The markings were unmistakable. "This is a warship," Vera said, her voice trembling. She had been on many missions before, but this was unlike anything she had ever encountered. But how? How did it get here? Zarek's mind raced as he pieced together the puzzle. A human warship, hidden away in the farthest reaches of space, far beyond the reach of any known enemy. It didn't make sense. How had humanity managed to build something so powerful and then hide it from the galaxy? And why? Before anyone could answer, the ship's systems powered up again. But this time, the energy readings shot through the roof. The warship was stirring from its long slumber, and whatever had been left dormant for centuries was now waking up. "This is not a relic," Zarek muttered, his eyes widening with realization. "It's a weapon." The hum of power grew louder, echoing throughout the ship. The team could feel the ground tremble beneath them. The warship was alive again, and whatever force it held within was about to make its presence known. And with that realization, a chill ran down their spines. They were no longer the hunters. They had just woken a sleeping giant. The awakening. As the team stepped deeper into the warship's control room, the hum of the ship's power systems seemed to pulse through the air, almost as if the ship itself was breathing, coming back to life. The walls flickered with ancient symbols, lights blinking in sequences, each one more vibrant than the last. The ship was more than just a relic. It was a force, and it was waking up. The moment Lyra entered the command console, the displays on the walls shifted, revealing what appeared to be a series of maps, star charts, and energy readings, data that had long been inaccessible to any living being. The ship's massive engine thrummed with energy, as if it had been waiting for someone to awaken it. The power in the room surged, sending a shockwave of excitement through the team. "Is it safe?" Kale, the youngest scientist, asked nervously, his voice filled with awe and apprehension. His eyes scanned the room, following the flickering lights as they danced across the walls. "It's too early to tell," Zarek answered, his gaze fixed on the main console. His mind raced with thoughts of how to harness the ship's power, how it might change the tide of the galaxy. But in the back of his mind, a warning echoed. Something about this ship felt wrong. Lyra was still absorbed in her work, her fingers dancing across the screen with skill and precision. As she unlocked the final security protocol, the ship's main engines roared to life, shaking the entire control room. A series of deep metallic groans reverberated through the hull, and the lights grew even brighter. The ship's exterior began to glow faintly, a golden blue aura radiating from the hull. The ship's wake-up call was loud enough to shake the ground, and the team froze in place, their hearts pounding in their chests. "This is it," Lyra whispered in disbelief. "The ship's systems are fully operational." Zarek stepped forward, his eyes wide as he scanned the newly activated display. It was a list of battle strategies, military protocols, and even a countdown timer. An ancient system that was still functional after centuries of silence. Whatever had happened here, this warship had been built for one thing: to fight. "Can you identify the weapon systems?" Zarek asked, his voice steady, but his mind was racing. Lyra nodded, her face flushed with excitement. "I'm running a scan now. But the readings are off the charts. I've never seen anything like it. The ship is built for full-scale war. It's not just a battleship. It's a weapon of mass destruction." Zarek looked at the others, a sudden chill creeping over him. His thoughts flashed to the galaxy outside, one filled with powerful alien races, each vying for dominance. The humans had always been considered weak, primitive by galactic standards. But this ship could change everything. "Stay alert," Zarek ordered. "This ship has been hidden for a reason. Whatever happened here, whatever it was that made it lie dormant for so long, it's not over. We need to figure out how to control it before it controls us." As Zarek spoke, the countdown timer on the screen began ticking down, its numbers slowly decreasing, as if it was preparing for something. The team gathered closer and Lyra's fingers flew across the keys, trying to decode the system before the ship's intentions became clear. But before they could react, the ship's external view screens flickered to life, revealing the vastness of space beyond. The stars seemed distant, almost unreachable, but there was something else in the distance, a fleet of alien ships, massive in size and strange in design. They were moving toward the planet. Zarek, Vera whispered, her eyes locked on the screen. That fleet, they're heading straight for us. Zarek's heart skipped a beat. The ship's sudden awakening, the countdown. It all made sense now. The galaxy wasn't just a place of exploration anymore. It was a place of war, and the human warship had just signaled its presence. Whoever was out there, whatever alien fleet was approaching, had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were about to feel the consequences. "Prepare yourselves," Zarek said, his voice low but filled with determination. "This ship has the power to destroy them. But first, we need to learn how to control it. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands." But as the countdown neared its final moments, a strange noise filled the room. Deep, rumbling, like the sound of something stirring in the depths of the ship. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls, the floor, and even their bones. It was a sound of awakening, of ancient power stirring from its slumber. "We're not alone," Orin said quietly, his voice trembling. He pointed to a new display that had just appeared on the screen. "Look, this wasn't a random event. The fleet we saw. They'd been monitoring this ship. They knew it was here, and they're coming for it." Zarek's mind raced. If the fleet had been aware of the warship's existence, that meant they might have been watching the planet for years, or maybe even longer. Whatever secrets this ship held, they were worth fighting for. And now, the real test of humanity's strength was about to begin. "Get ready," Zarek said, his tone sharp. "We're about to find out just how powerful this ship really is." The countdown hit 0. The ship's engines roared to life, the control room shuddering with newfound power. Humanity's first steps into galactic warfare were no longer theoretical. They were real. And the team was about to discover exactly what this colossal human warship could do. The first strike. The hum of the engines grew louder, and the walls of the ship vibrated with the raw energy coursing through its systems. The countdown had finished, but the real question was whether humanity could control what they had just unleashed. Zarek and the others stood frozen in the control room, their gazes fixed on the flickering screens that displayed the incoming alien fleet. The vastness of space had never felt so intimidating. "We need to move now," Lyra shouted, her fingers dancing over the console as she worked to decipher the ship's controls. The ship was alive, but they were far from mastering it. The alien fleet had already made its way closer, its colossal ships gliding silently through space. Zarek knew there was no time to waste. The team rushed to the auxiliary control panel where Lyra had activated a basic communication link with the ship's weapon systems. Each person's face was filled with uncertainty. No one had ever witnessed anything like this before. What if they failed? What if the ship turned against them? "The fleet's too close," Kale murmured, staring at the view screen, his eyes wide with fear. "We can't let them get any closer." Zarek's mind raced as he processed the situation. The alien fleet was powerful, massive ships armed with advanced weaponry. They wouldn't hesitate to attack, and humanity's first response had to be swift and precise. But there was a bigger concern. What if the human ship, despite all its power, wasn't enough? "We have to show them what we're capable of," Zarek said, his voice low but resolute. "Activate the weapon systems." Lyra hesitated, her fingers hovering over the control panel. I don't know if it's safe to engage. The weapon system is unlike anything we've ever seen. I'm not sure how to." Her voice trailed off as she looked at the glowing displays, each one lighting up with unreadable data. Then, without another word, she slammed her hand onto the activation panel. A sudden jolt surged through the room as the ship's weapon systems engage. The control room went dark for a moment, but the moment of silence was quickly replaced with a loud, terrifying screech. The ship's exterior began to glow with an intense blue hue, and the walls of the control room began to hum with power. Lyra looked up, eyes wide in shock. "What is this?" she asked, her voice cracking with a mixture of awe and fear. Zarek's eyes widened as the massive ancient warship began to charge its energy. The power being drawn from the ship's core was immense, too much for any human to fully comprehend. The control screens flickered, and the alien fleet was now within firing range. Zarek knew they had mere moments before the first shot would be fired. The countdown was over, but the war had just begun. "Do it," Zarek shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. "Now." Lyra nodded, and with a single command, the ship unleashed its first strike. A burst of blue energy shot from the ship's massive cannons, streaking across the void of space like a comet. It collided with the nearest alien ship, obliterating it instantly in a flash of light. The blast sent shockwaves rippling through space, and the force of the explosion echoed throughout the entire system. For a moment, everything was still. The control room was filled with the faint sound of the ship's engines and the faint hum of its energy systems. Then, one by one, the alien ships began to react. "They're returning fire," Kale shouted, panic rising in his voice. The massive alien vessels fired their weapons, sending energy beams toward the human warship. But the ship's shields flared to life just in time, absorbing the energy without so much as a scratch. The sheer size and power of the ship's defensive systems left the crew in awe. It was clear that this ship wasn't just a relic. It was a machine of war, built for this very moment. Zarek's heart raced as he watched the chaotic battle unfold on the view screen. The human ship had just made a statement, one that would echo throughout the galaxy. The power of humanity was now on full display, and the alien fleet was left scrambling to react. But the battle wasn't over. The alien fleet wasn't going to back down easily. Their ships were massive, their weapons strong, but the human warship had something they couldn't anticipate. The raw power of an ancient force, long dormant but now awakened with an unstoppable fury. "We're not out of this yet," Zarek said, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding outside. "We need to hold our ground. This is just the beginning." As the alien fleet regrouped, a new wave of fear swept over the crew. The battle was far from over, and humanity had just begun to show its true power. There would be no turning back now. The fate of the galaxy was in their hands. The galaxy's response. The warship's blast had left a massive crater in the alien fleet, but that was only the beginning. The alien armada, furious and unwilling to let one of their own fall so easily, shifted tactics. Their fleet regrouped and prepared for a second strike, sending waves of advanced fighter ships toward the human vessel. Zarek stood frozen at the center of the command room, staring at the monitors as the alien ships formed an intricate formation. The enemy was adapting quickly, clearly impressed by the power of humanity's starship, but unwilling to retreat. Instead, they came at full force. "We've pissed them off," Kale muttered, eyes flicking between the various consoles. "They're sending everything they've got." Lyra, still in charge of the ship's controls, clenched her fists, her knuckles turning white. "We have to hold them off. We can't let them break through the shields. If they get inside our defense perimeter, we're finished." Zarek nodded, his mind calculating the odds. The first strike had been a fluke, a fortunate hit. But now, the aliens had the advantage of numbers, and they weren't going to give up without a fight. "Activate the weapon systems again," Zarek ordered, his voice steady, though a cold sweat began to form on his brow. "We need to take them out before they surround us." As the first alien fighters made their approach, Lyra's fingers flew across the control board. The hum of the ship's powerful engines surged as the weapon systems began to charge once again. Outside, the alien fleet loomed, now so close that the crew could almost hear the weapons firing in the distance. The tension was palpable. The human ship's energy shield flashed brightly as the first wave of alien fighters released a barrage of laser fire. But it was all absorbed, leaving the ship unharmed. Zarek watched with bated breath. For a split second, everything seemed still. The ship's shield stood unshaken, a monument of human technology. But then the alien fleet unleashed their true power. Suddenly, a massive wave of fire shot from the alien warships. Multiple beams of high-powered energy aimed at the human ship, each one threatening to tear through the shield like a knife through paper. Zarek's eyes widened, and a jolt of panic surged through him. The shields had absorbed everything they had thrown at it, but this new energy felt different. It was powerful, too powerful. Braced for impact, Zarek shouted, as Lyra scrambled to adjust the energy output to strengthen the shields. The beam struck, and for a moment, the entire ship trembled as if it might break apart. But the shield held. It flared, glowing with intensity, like a protective dome against the barrage of incoming fire. However, the shield was quickly weakening under the strain, and every second felt like an eternity. The beam was too strong. If this continued, their defenses would be exhausted. "Lyra, can you do it?" Zarek's voice was strained. "I'm doing everything I can," she shouted back, her voice tight with concentration. "But this isn't like anything we've ever faced. I don't know if I can keep it up much longer." The first wave of alien fighters darted toward the human warship, trying to break through. Zarek gritted his teeth, watching as their missiles approached. The crew's fate rested on their ability to turn this tide, and fast. Zarek glanced at the other side of the room, where Kel was desperately coordinating with the defense systems. "Activate the countermeasures. Now," he barked. Kel's eyes locked onto the controls. Without hesitation, he slammed his fist onto a button, triggering the ship's anti-missile system. In an instant, thousands of small projectiles shot out from the warship's underside, streaking across the sky like a swarm of angry bees. Each missile intercepted an incoming alien fighter or missile, detonating in fiery explosions that filled the view screen with debris. The ship's weapons began firing once again, their powerful energy beams cutting through the alien formations with devastating precision. This time, there were fewer and fewer alien fighters in the immediate vicinity. Yet, despite their efforts, the rest of the armada pressed forward, relentless in their attack. "This is it," Zarek said grimly, turning back toward the crew. "We're going to need every ounce of firepower we have left. If we can take down their command ships, the fleet will fall apart." "Lyra, charge the main cannon." Lyra didn't flinch. Her fingers moved with confidence, despite the chaos around her. The lights dimmed again as the ship's core began to draw in more power, charging for the next blast. The air in the control room grew heavy, thick with tension. "Hold on," Lyra said, her voice tight with anticipation. "The shot's going to be massive." Zarek stood by, waiting as the countdown ticked down. The alien fleet's movements were erratic now, their attempts to breach the shield growing more desperate. They knew this was a critical moment. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. Lyra's voice rang out. The ship's energy cannons erupted with an explosion of light so bright it nearly blinded the crew. The shot traveled faster than the eye could follow, hitting the lead command ship dead on. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, sending a ripple through the enemy's forces. The shockwave spread through the fleet, and for a brief moment, the vastness of space seemed to tremble. But it wasn't over. The alien fleet was not disbanded yet, and the battle had only just begun. The final stand. The space surrounding the human warship was a chaotic maelstrom of fire, metal, and destruction. The alien fleet, now divided but far from defeated, surged forward with a relentless determination. They had lost their command ship, but their resolve was only strengthened. Zarek knew the outcome of this battle would either seal humanity's fate or propel them into the galactic spotlight as a force to be reckoned with. Inside the command room, the crew of the human warship was operating on pure adrenaline. Lyra's hands flew over the controls, manipulating the ship's systems to keep their defenses at peak strength. The ship's power reserves were dangerously low, and every move had to be calculated to perfection. Zarek could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him, but he held firm. There was no turning back now. The enemy was closing in fast, their ships arranged in a way that seemed to anticipate every move the human ship made. The aliens were no longer taking chances. They were moving in for the kill. "Keep firing," Zarek shouted, his voice rising above the din of the battle. "Don't let up, Lyra. We need to take out as many of them as we can before they get too close." The ship's main cannon, now fully recharged, fired again with a deafening boom. The beam shot across the vastness of space, impacting an alien ship with devastating force. The explosion lit up the darkened battlefield like a star collapsing on itself, sending shockwaves through the surrounding fleet. However, it wasn't enough. The remaining alien ships had formed an impenetrable formation, and despite their losses, they continued to press forward. Alien fighters began to close in on all sides of the human ship, preparing for a final assault. The aftermath. The sound of battle slowly faded as the last alien ship vanished into the distance, retreating into the vast emptiness of space. The space around the human warship was eerily quiet, save for the hum of the ship's damaged systems and the quiet murmurs of the crew as they processed the enormity of what had just transpired. Zarek stood at the front of the command room, his gaze fixed on the flickering screens that showed the remaining alien ships retreating. Despite the victory, there was a deep sense of unease. They had won this battle, but at what cost? "Damage report," Zarek ordered, his voice steady, but carrying a hint of the exhaustion that had been building throughout the fight. Lyra, who had been monitoring the ship's systems, looked up from her console. "The warship's hull is severely damaged. Shields are down, engines are at 30% capacity. We've got a lot of repairs to make. However, the core systems are intact, and we've managed to preserve most of the weapon systems." Zarek nodded, taking a deep breath. They had survived, but the warship was barely holding together. It had been a hard-fought victory, and now they needed to recover. "Send out a distress signal," Zarek ordered. "We need medical teams, supplies, and backup. We can't stay in this state for long." The crew worked quickly to send out the distress signal, but Zarek knew that help would take time to arrive. He walked over to the observation window, his eyes scanning the debris of the battle. The wreckage of the alien fleet was scattered in space, and the human warship, its once pristine exterior now pocked with scars from the battle, loomed in the distance. Kale, who had been standing near the tactical console, approached Zarek. "Commander, we did it, but we can't let our guard down. The aliens will come back." Zarek looked at him, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and caution. "I know, this battle might be over, but the war is just beginning." The fleet had retreated, but Zarek knew it wouldn't be long before they regrouped and returned with more forces. The battle they had just fought had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, but it had also shown the aliens something they hadn't expected. Humanity was not a species to be ignored. The days of Earth being a quiet, insignificant planet in the galaxy were over. As Zarek turned to face the crew, he could see the exhaustion and pride in their eyes. They had done the impossible. They had taken on a powerful, well-equipped alien force and lived to tell the tale. But it was only the beginning. They had proven their strength, but they would need to stay strong if they were to defend their home and their future. "This victory is just the start," Zarek said, his voice firm. "We've shown the galaxy that we're not weak. But we need to be ready. The war is far from over. They'll come for us again. And next time, we need to be ready for anything." The crew nodded in agreement. They had proven themselves on the battlefield, and now they would prove themselves in the fight for Earth's survival. The dawn of a new era. As days passed, the remnants of the fierce battle seemed to fade, but the weight of their victory and the price they had paid lingered on. The crew of the human warship, though battered, were alive. and that in itself was a victory worth celebrating. But deep down, everyone knew this was just a temporary respite. The galaxy would not forget what had happened. The alien forces would regroup, and a new era of warfare had begun. Zarek stood at the ship's observation deck, gazing out into the vast expanse of space. The stars twinkled in the distance, as peaceful as ever, but the events of the past few days had changed everything. Earth was no longer the quiet, forgotten corner of the galaxy. Humanity had made its presence known, and the other civilizations would have to adjust to that new reality. "We need to take the fight to them," Kale said, stepping up beside Zarek. His eyes were filled with the fire of determination, the same fire that had kept him fighting through the hardest moments of battle. Zarek glanced at his friend and nodded. "We will, but we need to rebuild first. Our warship is barely operational, and the fleet is scattered. If we're going to win this war, we need every resource, every advantage. The enemy won't give us a chance to regroup." The tension was palpable. The warship had been the spearhead of humanity's first victory in a galaxy far more advanced and dangerous than they had ever known. But this victory had cost them. Many of their finest soldiers had fallen, and repairs were still underway. Earth would need time to build up its strength before the next wave of enemies came. But humanity was not without its strengths. The warship may have been damaged, but the crew had proven their ability to fight and survive. The alien fleets may have underestimated humanity's power, but now they would have to face the reality of Earth's unyielding will. "We've shown them what we're made of," Zarek said, his voice low but resolute. "And we're not done yet." The crew was busy rebuilding, their efforts relentless, as they scoured the ship for any vital technology they could salvage. The ship's systems were down, but the knowledge they had gained from their enemies was invaluable. There was talk of reverse engineering the alien technology, using it to fortify their defenses and improve their weapons. But Zarek knew that it wasn't just technology they needed to survive. It was unity, strength. They needed to come together as a planet, as a species, and fight for their survival in a universe that now viewed them as a threat. "Earth will be ready," Zarek murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. He could already see the dawn of a new era, one where humanity no longer cowered in the shadows. They had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back. As he turned away from the observation deck, his mind raced with the possibilities of what the future could hold. The galaxy had been shaken, but Earth was still standing. The warship had proven its might, and its crew had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The rest of the crew gathered in the war room, their faces determined and resolute. Their unity, forged through battle, was stronger than ever. The damage had been immense, but they would repair and rebuild. Together, they would ensure that the galaxy would never forget what had transpired. Humanity had arrived, and they were not going anywhere. "We are Earth," Zarek said to the assembled crew. "We fight not only for our survival, but for the future of every human being out there. We are the beginning of something much bigger. This war won't define us, but it will ignite a fire that will burn through the stars. And when we rise, the galaxy will know it." With that, Zarek took his seat at the head of the table, and the crew settled into their positions. Their work was just beginning. It would take time, resources, and sacrifice, but they had the will to carry on. The warship, though scared, stood as a symbol of Earth's resilience. The crew, though weary, were stronger than ever. And Earth, a planet once overlooked and underestimated, was now a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had been shaken, and humanity had just begun to show what they were capable of.